Welcome back everyone to another episode of The Road Chose Me. My name's Dan, and on today's episode we're exploring the wild coastline of Western Australia. Let me show you where we are. We've come down, we're no longer in the north of Western Australia where we came across the Gibb, we came through the Pilbara, all of that famous region. Now we're heading down this part of the coastline. We'll get out to Shark Bay, which is infamously famous. There's Steep Point, the westernmost point of the mainland, and slowly we're making our way down towards Perth. And I should mention too, the Jeep will be on display and I'll be speaking at the Perth four-wheel drive show. That is from November 4th to the 6th. So that's coming up in just a couple of weeks from when you see this video. So if you're in the Perth area, swing by and say hello. I'll be in the content creators area. But anyway, enough with that stuff. Let's get on with the adventure. Here we go, the wild coastline of Western Australia.
So most of you probably know by now that Dan and I love wild camping whenever we can. But one thing that we've experienced driving across Australia is there's actually a ton of private gated property. And a lot of these places are actually stations. So they're old cattle stations. And I don't know if you guys can hear in the background or not, but I'm actually I'm very close to a bunch of cows and they're actively working cattle stations. So we thought today we'd just take a few minutes and show you guys a little bit more about what a station stay looks like. We've stayed in these from time to time. It's a really nice break. Sometimes you can get a shower, and it's also, I think, a really cool cultural part of Australia. So today we're staying at Bloopers Station, which started off as a sheep station, and now they've moved on to cattle. So they're in the process of mustering right now. They've got about 3,500 cattle on site, and maybe we'll show you a little bit about what this place looks like and how it feels to stay here. So here we are, we're at the cattle yards, and behind me you can see some of the 3,500 cattle that are in the process of being mustered. So this station is a little bit smaller than one of the last stations we stayed at. Some of these stations can be 1 million acres big. So that's huge. Lots of station owners haven't even seen all the spots on their properties. And when they're in the process of mustering, they'll round the cows up somewhere like this. And then of course they'll go off to be processed. And they'll muster using everything they have in their power. So they're mustering on motorbikes, using trucks, using horses, and they actually often use helicopters here, which is pretty incredible to see. They kind of like buzz the ground in front of the cows and use that to try and muster them in. So it's a pretty spectacular sight, and it's actually really fun that they're doing some mustering here. Although it's pretty loud. We heard a lot of mooing in the night last night. So there you go, there's the cows. Hey, here's some hay. So they used to have quite a few sheep living on site, and as a bit of a homage to their history, Bloopers decided to keep 7 sheep here as pets, and a bit of a testament to history. So I thought you guys should meet the sheep. Here, sheepy, sheepy, sheepy. So this is one of the other most exciting things about Bloopers Station is they actually have outdoor showers, and they're powered by this steam donkey. So check it out. Basically at the bottom here, it's wood fired. They've got a ton of wood stacked over there, and this wood actually heats up the water for the showers. So
Here we are everyone, a bit of a milestone as we've hit the coast of Australia and started heading south. We are at the Tropic of Capricorn. So this is, I think, 25 degrees south of the equator. Quite the milestone to get here. And now we're finally leaving the tropics. It's been months and months that we've been, close to the equator here in Northern Australia. And one of the great things about getting south of it now is we're going to avoid the rainy season. So soon enough, they're going to start getting their tropical monsoon rains up north, which basically close every single gravel road, everything interesting, all the wild places. They become totally flooded and inaccessible. So it's important that we get south, this far south now, we're good basically for the rest of the year. We could hang out. It'll start getting hotter and hotter, but roads aren't going to close because of flooding. So great to cross that milestone. And it feels again like when I first crossed in Mexico, when I crossed in Africa and South America. You know, I'm always kind of flirting with the equator and crossing in and out of the tropics. While we're here too in this parking lot, another great sign I wanted to show you, keep left. So these ones in Australia are always in touristy parking lots because there've been some massive crashes over the years where tourists come out driving on the wrong side, the incorrect side, also known as the right side of the road. And so you can imagine they pull out, they drive along, car comes around the corner, massive collision. So these things are really common, just trying to remind people they need to drive on not the right side, but the left side. They need to drive on the correct side of the road, and that isn't the right side. Getting confusing? Just off the coast here in Western Australia lies the Ningaloo Reef. While it isn't the biggest reef in the world, that's the Great Barrier Reef on the east coast, this is one of the biggest reefs in the world and is still utterly breathtaking. With the colour of the water and that white sand, you can imagine this place looks and feels exactly like paradise. We can't resist, and so we rent some fins, some snorkels and some masks and set out for a day of snorkeling. Everything you're watching right now is right offshore, and we were actually drift diving most of the time. So we would just jump in the water and let the current take us down as we drifted above all the coral, the fish and all the animals, go down a few hundred yards, come back out again, walk up the beach and start the whole process over again. We did spot a small reef shark, I saw a stingray, and Katie was pretty excited when we found yet another sea turtle, which is easily our favourite. You can see this is breathtaking, and I don't even think this was a particularly clear day. The Ningaloo Reef is utterly incredible. Just found a cool little lizard on the road. I don't actually know what this one's called. I'm tempted to say blue tongue lizard. You can see he's not very big. There's my hand for comparison, but he's really stumpy. And I do know he'll bite, and I do know that if I try to pick him up, he'll pee on me. But I'm trying to get him off the road. So pretty cool to see this little guy. He's so armored, he's so like strong. Go on, buddy, off the road. No visit to this part of Western Australia would be complete without stopping at Monkey Mia. This place is so famous, I've heard about it since I was a little kid. It's a place on the coast where wild dolphins historically stopped in and got fishing scraps from the local fishermen as they were cleaning their catch of the day. Over the years, obviously tourists got wind of this and more people started showing up to watch the dolphin feeding. It's now extremely regulated, and they're really careful about how much they feed them and when they feed them so that they won't actually become dependent on humans. I'm not too sure about that, and it's obviously a pretty big money spinner for the resort here that controls the whole thing. We had to pay an entry ticket. They assured us that what they're doing is okay for the dolphins, and I was a little disappointed we weren't allowed to get in the water with them, which is the memories that I have from back in the day when people came here. All the same, it was still really cool to get this close to the wild dolphins. So here we are, we're at a place called Cape Peron National Park, which is stunningly beautiful. Red dirt gravel road goes up on the beautiful ocean. And we're at Peron Homestead here, which kind of was a huge sheep station for 100 years. And you can see the old windmill in the background. That's always cool to see. And what the windmill does is it pumps water from deep underground. And in fact, from 500 meters underground comes this artisanal water, which is a hot spring, Dan's favorite. So we were here last night actually. Katie and I went for a big long soak. The stars were out, we watched the moon set. It was stunning because this water is actually 40 degrees Celsius, which is right around 100 Fahrenheit. So for once in Australia, we found a hot spring, it's actually higher than body temperature, which is what I always love because then it's a legit hot spring. And so we're out in the middle of nowhere. We're gonna jump in for another quick soak. We probably won't last too long because of the hot weather, but come with us as we explore Cape Peron National Park and the stunning, stunning coastline and the things to see around here. So this thing already felt hot last night when we got in. Oh, and I can tell you right now, it is borderline too hot. I still have one more step to go down. And you can see the water's kind of murky. Not sure why, I guess just because it's coming from deep underground and something about it makes it a bit murky like this. But it doesn't smell at all, and it is hot, I can tell you that. For all the viewers outside Australia, I thought I'd show you, this is classic Australian history. This is a wool shed or a shearing shed, which there must be tens of thousands of these around Australia, where they bring the sheep to shear them, to sort the wool, all of that stuff. And because I grew up out in the country, these are really common, and lots of our family friends worked in wool sheds, even had sheep stations. I never worked in a wool shed. My dad did, a really good family friend of ours did. So I've definitely been in them a few times around them, but I was never like, you know, an outback hardworking kid like that. But this is basically a wool shed, and you can see it's pretty rustic, it's pretty basic. This one obviously hasn't been used in a long time, but the general idea is that all the sheep get herded in this way, and they get stored in these pens when they're ready to be shorn. And then over here is where the shearers work. And so the shearers, these guys are like seriously tough, hardworking guys. And this is the old mechanical version of a shearing setup. This would spin, this wheel turns and it turns, and on the end of this is basically like a big clipper, kind of like, you know, what you use to clip your hair or whatever, but the old school version. And so they come over here, they grab a sheep out of this pen, and they stand right where I'm standing now. And they basically bend down the entire time and they shear a sheep. You know, the whole sheep gets shorn, and then they let it go through their legs and it goes out through that hole there. And they say that a good shearer could do one sheep every 2 minutes. You can imagine it's summertime when they do this, so it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 Celsius, back-breaking, very hard work, very endless, extremely noisy in here, really dusty because of all the dust and all the sort of cotton fibers or the wool fibers that are coming off the sheep. And then so what happens is they're just working all day long, horrendously hard work. Someone else grabs the wool and they throw it and they fling it out onto this table. And this is called the classing table. And a good family friend of ours, it was his job, he would then class the wool. So he'd inspect it, look how many burrs are in it, look how thick it is, the colour, who even knows, all the different things, figure out what quality of wool it is, and then put it in a different region over here, you know, based on what quality it was. And there's actually still some wool lying around in here too that we can play with. It's all pretty old now, but this stuff's super fluffy and soft, even though it's as old as it is. And then, so they've got all the different classes sitting here in the different kind of holding pens. And right, the last step is that they compress it, or they press it using this big old hydraulic press thing. This one might actually be a manual one, it's wooden. And one summer, actually, my dad worked in a wool shed, and that was his job. He ran the press, and he had to move around these huge, big, heavy bales of wool. I have a memory of him coming home, and after 2 weeks, he was exhausted. He slept for like 3 days because, you know, it's such hard manual work. But this is what a classic Aussie wool shed looks like. And there are still many, many, many thousands of these in use all across Australia. It's still essentially how it's done today. A heck of a lot of hard manual labour out here in the scorching hot sun. So it has been another huge day of adventure, and now this is the campsite that we've got for tonight. We're still up on Cape Barron. This is called Bottle Beach. This is one of the official national park campsites. So we did have to pay for it. This is not free camping. But you can see sunset has just gone off down the ocean's just right over there. We got the awning out because we had a fair bit of sun later this afternoon. So we were trying to get some shelter from that. And Katie's just getting started on dinner. And you can see back that way is the ocean. And I had the drone up about 5 or 10 minutes ago. So I'll show you that footage now and show you how stunning these campsites are. This is just utterly incredible. And it's funny, you know, earlier I had said, oh, maybe we won't bother going all the way to the top. Definitely always rule, go to the end of the road, go see what's out there, see how beautiful it gets, because usually the end of the road is more beautiful. Here we are, guys, at yet another stunning campsite right on the beach. And we're actually heading out towards Steep Point, which is the most westerly point in all of Australia. And so it's out on this jutty out piece of land. We just drove past some huge big sand blows. It is stunning and breathtaking, the color of the water. And actually looking across right there, that's basically where we were yesterday, out on Cape Barron. So we've driven sort of down, around, and then all the way back up again. Super corrugated, super sandy roads, but definitely worth it. This is a place that I am pretty excited to call home for the night. Once again, Australia turning on the beach camps. So here we are, everyone. We have arrived at Steep Point, which is the most westerly point on the Australian mainland. And this ticks off all 4 of the cardinal points for us. We were down in Wilson's Prom in Victoria, most southerly point, and then we went to the most southerly point of Tasmania too, although that's an island off the mainland. In Byron Bay, we're at the easterly point. Up in Cape York, the most northerly point. Now, most westerly point, there are the coordinates. I haven't actually checked on my GPS how accurate that is. But we're right on the edge of the ocean here, and surprisingly there isn't that much wind right now. It's been hyper windy. Last night was insane. We got sandblasted even inside the swag. But right now there's quite a bit of swell out in the ocean, but not much wind. So it's actually, we've been hanging out here already for half an hour. It's a really nice place to be. So it's kind of hard to believe, but we're 3/4 of the way around Australia already. Things are going fantastically. The adventure rolls on. Let's go and see what else we can find out here on the coastline here. It's supposed to get lots of cliffs, lots of stunning views. Let's go see what it looks like. So here we are, guys. We're just coming to the end of the gravel roads, and so I've pulled out the air compressor hose and I'm airing up. And as you guys know, I mounted an ARB single under the bonnet here, under the hood. This thing has once again been flawless. I absolutely will do exactly the same thing again in the future. I see no reason to use a different compressor or to mount it anywhere else. I love how it is like that. And so that brings us to the end of our kind of Western Australia coastline adventures. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we've enjoyed being out here. Utterly incredible wilderness out here. You can see the flies have found me again, even though it's a little bit windy. They're pretty friendly in this part of the world, these flies. So thanks again for watching. If you did enjoy the video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and if you want early access, behind the scenes content, and a whole lot more, you can check that out over on Patreon right now. There's a link down in the description. But until next time, have fun out there, and maybe we'll bump into you on the road.
Hi everyone. So a few of you have asked to see a little bit more, blah, 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 blah. So most of you probably know by now that now they've got to eat, right? Bah.